Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dambisa Dube. If you're new here, hi. And hi, welcome back to my subscribers. I see all the love, I see all the comments. Keep it coming, guys, and keep subscribing. So today I'm discussing something I've been asked about a lot. People have been really curious about my experience giving birth in Germany. For context, for those who are new here, I'm currently based in Berlin with my small little family. It's myself and my 2 kids, and I actually arrived here last year, October, towards the end of October, and I was pregnant at the time. I was about 5 months pregnant, and I gave birth here in Germany, something that I've obviously never experienced, and I know that there's a lot of people who want to relocate with different circumstances, but there are people who are wanting to build a family abroad and are very curious about what this experience looks like or is like. So I'm going to just share my experience. Initially, when I planned to move to Germany, being pregnant was not part of the plan. So it was one of those things that happened and we embraced it, and I had to plan around it. And I was in many ways not prepared for the administrative process of giving birth in Germany. So I just want to highlight that if you are thinking of moving, but you also want to start a family with or expand your family with your partner, and you are unclear of the timing, I just want to reassure you that it is possible. It is going to be a bit harder, like everything is with kids. Or rather, let me frame it this way. There's just a lot more to consider when there's a family that you have to bear in mind. So yes, it is possible. It is going to just mean that every step along the way, whether it's the visa application process, whether it's the settling in, and the Anmeldung, and getting an apartment. You know, I've got several videos on my channel that get into, you know, the details and the things to factor in. But please don't be discouraged if you want to start a family or expand your family, but you also want to grow in different ways and you want to relocate. This is possible. So I relocated. I was 5 months pregnant, and man, it was a process, it was a journey, but I very much don't regret it and feel that I was accommodated here. I felt very well taken care of in terms of the medical support and accessibility of specialists and support here medically. I really felt like I was in a first world country. So just to keep it real, you have to factor in your medical insurance options. That will mean that if you are giving birth in Germany, you often have to opt for the more expensive, more comprehensive option. Generally, insurance options here are actually not that pricey, but we've had to, you know, make that sacrifice. So we pay quite a bit. I will leave a link for the insurance that I'm currently using. It's called AXA, to look into if you happen to maybe be expecting a baby or you have a family. It is an option. It just is a more expensive one. So that was one thing I wasn't prepared for prior to finding out I was pregnant. And the moment I found out I was pregnant, that was something I just needed to, you know, come to terms with. I didn't have any other experience, so I opted for the private option just because as a research fellow and the type of visa that I have, I think I was a little bit limited in my options. However, I know that there are people who give birth and have kids and feel that their needs medically, healthcare-wise, are taken care of with other options. I can only speak from my experience. So if you come from a country like mine, I come from South Africa, where there's a huge difference between private and public healthcare. It's a huge shock when you come to Germany and you realize that everybody's afforded the same option. We don't have in Germany private hospitals or and public hospitals, and then you see like there's a huge difference in terms of how you're taken care of. Everybody has access to the same, including the doctors. I think the difference, at least from what I was told by my and my midwife, by my doctor, by my gynecologist, the difference essentially when you have a private insurance is that it is obviously far more expensive. You do get charged a bit more, and in some cases you do get priority assistance, you know, in terms of appointments and things like that. But other than that, the actual healthcare, you know, what you get afforded, the accessibility of things, everybody has access to the same. And I found that incredibly refreshing. So I found an appointment for a gynecologist relatively quickly. And that is also another tip that I would give people who come to the country, whether you have children or not. If there's certain things that you need to get taken care of, whether you need a specialist or things like that, that should be one of the first things that you look into when you arrive into the country. Found a gynecologist. That was the first thing I found, before we settled in any other way. And that was the same gynecologist that I used up until birth, and she then referred me to hospitals. So how it usually works is that you should find a gynecologist within your region or your neighborhood, so closest to you, and you should also then find a hospital where you want to deliver that is close by to you. You're not forced, but this is the preferred way. It's obviously a little bit difficult if you don't have a place to stay, which was our dilemma, where we were moving around a bit. However, this is usually what gynecologists advise, that please find a gynecologist closer to you, please find a hospital closer to you. I think when it comes to things like emergencies, it's also easier to handle. When your doctor's close by. And that goes for your midwife, if you opt to have one, any kind of medical support in the giving birth process, in the pregnancy process. It is advised that it is closest to your surroundings. It's very straightforward. You go there, you get a booklet, it details every step of the way. You go to appointments about once a month, and then towards the end you frequently go to your gynae up until you give birth, depending on whether you have complications or not. Usually what happens, which is different from my experience in South Africa, you go to the doctor, they assist you, then they mail you the invoice. You then can either pay upfront and send your proof of payment to your medical insurance for them to reimburse you, or you could send the invoice to your insurance and they pay them directly, which is the option that I always preferred. I think there's easier ways to do this where the doctors can directly communicate with insurance, but for whatever reason in Germany, that's not the way they like to do things. If you're German and watching and you know why, please leave a comment below and explain to us, because it seems very impractical. But this is the process. The pro for having this approach is that you can go to the doctor and never fear that you're not going to be assisted because you just don't have money on that day. That's if you're insured. Or feel like, oh, I can't go to the hospital for an emergency because I'm running low on my medical savings, which South Africans who are watching will be familiar with this. Or maybe that is not covered in my insurance. That's something I just had to get used to. I do find it quite impractical because if you move, then sometimes the invoices don't reach you. Then weeks go by without having made that payment, which is just an additional stress. I feel like when people are pregnant or anything that concerns our health, I think administratively things should be made easier for you. But that's just the way that things are here in Germany. So other than that, everything is top-notch. The facilities are top-notch. You do have the option of having a gynecologist and a midwife that support you, from the beginning of your pregnancy till you give birth, and in your fourth trimester, which is the trimester after you give birth. For me, I found it valuable to just have the midwife support me after giving birth. I didn't really see the value while I was seeing the gynecologist, but that's obviously a personal choice. And that was something I never experienced with my first pregnancy. I was constantly just so flabbergasted by the quality, by the service, by the equipment used, how, the medical staff can mitigate and support you to sort of overcome certain complications throughout your pregnancy. So I definitely felt very taken care of. And I opted to have a C-section due to personal reasons and also, my medical history. And that process also went really well. My recovery was also really great. My midwife supported with that. In Germany, it is encouraged, however, that you go the natural route, natural birth route, and you have to justify quite a bit to do the C-section. Otherwise, you have a challenge of your insurance not paying or partially paying for your C-section. So That is something that I know is different in other countries. For example, in my country, in South Africa, you can choose. Yes, the C-section does come at an additional cost, but generally most medical insurances or medical aids do cover the full cost of C-section. So that's another thing that I think people should just bear in mind if you're giving birth here in Germany. You don't have the option in Germany to not have medical insurance. So if you're thinking, I want to pay everything upfront, cash, great if you have that additional money. However, if you are living in Germany and you have some kind of permit or permission to stay here legally, you have to have insurance, medical insurance to be here. So unfortunately, that option is not available. For me, I like the medical insurance route, but I know there's some people who don't want those additional costs. They don't want to pay month to month. They just want to pay upfront. Unfortunately, that's not an option. If you've had a different experience and you are German and somehow you were able to pay, then please do share that. But for foreigners, to gain entry into the country, you have to be insured. After giving birth to my son, I was in the hospital for about 3 days or so, and I was up and running in terms of my physicality. I was good, and they really carefully monitored that. So they really, really took care of me. The hospital food and hospitality was okay. It was okay. It wasn't fantastic, but it was okay. I really loved the hospital where I gave birth, though, from a medical perspective. It's called Charité, a great hospital. And funny enough, I actually found out about it because I watched somebody's video on YouTube where they gave birth. So this platform is incredibly helpful. And yeah, I felt taken care of medically. I will now share some clips of my baby shower, the community that I had around me, maybe some of my emotions during the pregnancy. But that's really my experience in Germany and giving birth here. Hope this was helpful, and catch you next time. Enjoy.
Say